Well, it's an exciting time. It is until 5 on Wednesday, the 27th, and this is the V50. Has just arrived from China. So quantity 1 of all the billet parts, all the custom parts to build a V50. This is the unboxing. I've seen photos of this, but I have not actually seen it in person. So let's see what it looks like. Never done an unboxing video before. It's a first time for everything. Should have 3 case parts inside here, some Variated adapter parts, and a custom foot shaft. So we'll exercise some self-control and start with the smaller stuff first. So the output shaft is splined for Tomos sprockets. So there's the output sprocket. We almost made it with no takes. The dog had to kind of raise hell. This is the Variator part, because it is small and round. Variator parts are kind of the high-risk part, since they spin at crankshaft RPM. I kind of worry about those. This is the static ramp plate for the weights. Static ramp plate. Another Variated part here. It's round. Oh no, never mind. This is the it's not round. This is the cylinder adapter. This is a riser adapter plate to run Kimco Super 9 cylinders. So on the outside we have, I think it's a 75mm square bolt pattern, and then the inside is 50mm square. So these overlap with Puch. So what's cool about this is you bolt this on top of the case, and you can always revert back to Puch, and it gets the port timing correct for the Kimco cylinders. Let's look at here. This is the transmission cover. All the parts we've opened so far have been steel. They've been 4140. This is the first aluminum part. You know, the transmission housing. Got our oil reliefs for our needle bearing oiling. Got a nice big fat bearing for the output shaft, because it's going to be cantilevered on a huge sprocket. And then one of the big critical things is these 13mm bores here. The press fit for those is kind of critical, and then we've got 4mm locating pins to locate the transmission gear housing to the case. This part feels round, so it is a Variator part. This is the static plate for the belt. On Vespa, this would be the inner portion, but trying to remember, yeah, I had to swap it around. This is probably the riskiest part out of all of them. This part has Tomos clutch internal splines on it. It's a key to Tomos crankshafts. That's what I selected to use for the crank. They look really nice. We'll see if it fits. And this part keys in to here. I have to massage it a little bit. I think we keep this part, we'll drop it together. There's not a lot of tolerance on these. And these are steel, so heat this guy, put it together with that, it's good. Better for it to be tight than loose. And steel doesn't move as much as aluminum, but it still moves a lot. Now for the big parts. We've got the ignition case half. Now, unlike the ZA70, this is split straight down the center, so there are no undercuts like there are on the ZA70. Due to the case splits on the ZA70, that was one of the challenges. Is so one case half of the ZA70 is pretty complicated. There's some undercuts, but this was able to split straight down the center, which is also good if we choose to go a die-cast route. Make the tooling easier. So here's this guy. So we've got our setup for case induction, and we've eliminated the riser portion of the DO reed block. Simply the V-Force DO reeds actually sit directly in the case, and the reeds are super close to the crank, so it's a really tight, small pumping volume, just like Hobbits, Bodobacane, all that shit. It's really, really tight, small pumping volume, so it should be really responsive. The ZA70 has excellent throttle response with the Gila kit on it. And the pumping volume on this is even smaller, so it should sound great. Now for the, and we've got locating pins on this guy too. And then we've also got a 4mm oiling hole that goes down through into the, between the bearing and the seal. We've got our cable exit for wiring, and this is the same geometry for stator mounting as the ZA70. Then this top surface, the mating surface, we've got 44mm square for Puch that everyone's familiar with. And then you sort of get the idea of this part bolts on top and adapts to Kemco Super 90 with the port timing correct. That's what these outer tapped holes are for. But you know, there's a lot of meat here, so you could do other cylinders, different adapter plates. The kind of whole name of the game is to really open this up to some crazy stuff. And then here's the big boy, the largest portion of the build parts. Again, I've seen these on the computer, but you're opening these together first time. Here is the larger portion. What a big piece of billet that is. Here's the case. Get the output shaft for the Vespa Variator. Got another oiling hole right here. And you can see the oiling hole inside. We've got dowel holes for the alignment pins. Looks like we've got an oopsie here, but that doesn't matter. It's a prototype after all. And then here are the mating dowel pins for the transmission cover. So one of the things that I did omit from this was an oiling pocket for this back ball bearing. this surface here and this surface here are pretty close to one another, and I didn't want that to be super thin wall. Again, crank isn't really critical on this because it doesn't really matter if the crank floats. There's quite a bit of healthy amount of spacing on the crank. It doesn't really matter. Transmission, the axial plate matters a little bit more, especially when using helical cut gears. Straight cut gears, you can get away without shimming inside the transmission. And the way the gearing works out with Tomos sprockets, you should be able to run standard Puch rear wheels, and you should be able to run 11:1 gears. So you should be able to run some straight cut gears if you don't want to fool with shimming. But yeah, that's all the parts. So here'd be the main case. Like this. It does look good raw. And here's the transmission cover. Output shaft comes through here. And yeah. Current things waiting on now. Got miscellaneous flat parts coming from Simcut Send. The motor mounts, you'll notice one of the things that's interesting about this case is there are no motor mounts. These top bolt surfaces here will allow you to bolt on different motor mounts for different bikes. So this will not be targeted only at Puch. It'll also be targeted at anything. Tomos and Gorelli and Sachs are all things we're considering. The cool thing about it is the adapter plates for this will just be laser cut steel that are like welded together. Some 3/8" ID tubing to adapt this to whatever. Maxi and Magnum mounts will actually be different for Puch. And then the idea is kind of put this on whatever you can come up with. There'll be different integration kits for different bikes. Simcut's company I really like for laser cut tubing, Precision Tube Laser, is cutting all the pie wedges for the exhaust to adapt a DOS Botanis chamber, however the fuck you say it, to the bike. The chamber's moved up, but I've kept the header length the same. People seem to really like the tuned length of the pipe, so the goal is not change the tuned length of the pipe. There's some previews of that tube design on Instagram. But yeah, this is cool. A lot of parts here. Get them all in frame. And yeah, be interesting to see what pops up as issues when this starts going together. I've built a couple versions of this printed, and I have yet to build anything that is machined. So I will post updates. The plan is to ride the bike to, or at least at, the Athens, Georgia rally. So if you're planning on being in Athens, Georgia for the 420 rally, keep an eye out for the V50. And I think you can also expect to see another production quantity release of the ZA70. Those will be in gray anodized, so you can look forward to those dropping. You missed out on the first batch. Sorry, all the cool people that were nice enough to buy the first versions, they will be the only ones to get an anodized black. This may not get an anodized black. Looking at possibly doing castings on this to get the price point down. The ZA70 ended up being a little bit more expensive than I wanted it to be. This I want it to be really cheap, affordable, and accessible. ZA70s are super fun. Big limitation on this, besides all the risk with the Variated parts, is the belt section. So this fits on Puch without cutting any part of the frame. There's no custom frame modifications. It all bolts up without modifying anything. And one of the limitations to do that and get a dual variated setup within the footprint between the stock unmolested motor mounts and the front wheel with compressed fork geometry was I had to go with a tiny belt section. So this is kind of like an M101 kit for whatever you can think of with big boy cylinders. Who knows, it might just completely melt the belts, but I think even as a 50cc only engine, only having like 6 to 10 horsepower, this would still be super fun. Yeah. Stay tuned. I'll keep posting updates. Get some of the critical fits. More critical fits is. These are the inner Variated parts. Dropped a slider. Did get these together, they just sort of needed to be deburred. I'll take a second to appreciate the fit on that. Looks good. Slides on. No discernible play. Good fit on the Tomos splines. Doesn't really seem to be any lash. I mean, I'm sure there's some, but doesn't seem to be much. Got this together. Pressed it together nice and tight. Got a good fit on Variator. These guys go together. Look good. Gonna wiggle them apart. So good tolerance on these. That's about it. No more as we get further down the build.